Welcome, guys. Today is going to be so much fun. I have the pleasure of interviewing my dad, and we're going to be talking about God out of the box. So I want to start this off, and first I want to say, kind of give a little story from like my perspective over the last bunch of years.
Yeah.
I remember when I was started off at community college and I was taking my Eastern philosophy class.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I would always come home and I would have these, at the time, radical ideas.
Yeah.
And I would always come and discuss these with you. And I'd always have this concept like, oh, what does the Bible say about this? Or what about that? Or what about this? Yeah. And you were one of the few people who wouldn't just write it off. It wouldn't just say, oh, well, it doesn't agree with the Bible, so it doesn't matter. We'd have an actual discussion about it.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate it. You always used to say, what was it? Even a blind squirrel can find a nut sometimes.
That's right.
Like, that's how the Yankees got Derek Jeter. Like, that's what you always said. And that stuck with me over the years.
Yeah.
And so I really think that is one of the reasons why I kind of was able to blaze the path that I have and the journey that I've gone on so far. So I want to say thank you. And it's really neat to see how our journeys are kind of like coming similarly together once again. So this idea of God out of the box.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain what that means to you?
What that means to me is like I was raised in more of a Christian faith, you know, like you were.
Yeah.
And in that you get a construct of the box, which is, you know, what the church teaches, the traditions, all that stuff. It's all, you know, if it's outside of that, it's wrong. So there's the box.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, for me, I realized kind of far along in my journey, a lot further along than you caught on a lot quicker. I learned that God was bigger than the box I had set him in the way of like experiencing God outside of church or outside of church ministry, you know, the kind of those constructs.
Yeah.
In the sense of like, oh, I can be out in the woods, going for a walk, see an amazing landscape, and feel God's presence. Okay? And, you know, not that that's, you know, fully outside of church, because it's great if you go back and you look at church history,
right.
You go, oh, well, hey, there's, you know, Saint Francis, who's like one of the most famous saints, right?
Yeah. He's my favorite.
Yeah, mine too. And here he is preaching to the animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And he's talking about the like the moon being his brother, you know, of like he is part of creation in the same way that, you know, God created everything. So we are all related. Oh, wow. Now that will blow Christians who are in, you know, the traditional box.
Yeah.
That blows their mind because they're like, no. That's New Age.
Right.
It's not that new.
Right. It's like the New Age is almost old age. It's almost like a mystic idea. But it's almost like that's what it was founded on or intended, or there seems to be some sort of connection here.
I think a lot of the modern churches today, they forget the early church fathers. They forget the early mystics is what they were called. They forget that part of their own history. Because it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit in the today's thing. So they write them off. Well, I mean, you got, my gosh, in the Bible itself, you got John the Baptist.
He's a wild character.
I mean, he's out in the wilderness eating bugs.
Yeah,
you know,
that would not fly today.
Camel-haired robes and stuff. Yeah. I mean, that's just, he was a little off back then. But Jesus in the Bible revealed himself the first time of this, you know, God comes down as a dove and says, this Jesus, you know, my son who I'm, you know, my beloved son, all that was to John the Baptist. So he revealed it to him who was a little bit out there. Right. He wasn't inside the box. He was outside going, hey, there's somebody coming.
Right.
You know? And I think today's church forgets those kind of roots. Do you remember a conference we went to years and years ago. John Crowder.
I was gonna bring up John Crowder
cow.
as you started talking. I was like, his book, Mystics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Misfits and Mystics.
That was it,
of the
yeah.
early church. I
Yeah,
still
yeah.
have it. I still have it.
Oh, amazing.
Great book.
Yeah.
It brings out all those things.
I need to read that now that I think
Yeah.
about it. I never did.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great book. But it's John Crowder. He was one of those guys who was just like a little bit. You went, holy cow. Yeah. You knew he had a relationship with God. Mm-hmm. Because you could just feel God's love and God's presence when he was he was doing his stuff.
Yeah.
So you go, okay, that's outside of the the traditional do worship, have a sermon, have prayer time at the end, and we're done.
Right.
Like this guy, he came and talked about crazy stuff.
Even when I was pretty out there beginning, like he was far out from me too.
He was far out for a lot of people. But great guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, but when I started having those experiences, I realized God was bigger than this. And then, just in my own life, going through struggles and really dark times in my own life, I realized, wait a minute, God was there. And God wasn't there in the sense of like, okay, I went to church and I listened to worship and I felt his presence. He was. But he was also there when, I'm sitting in the dark and you can't feel God. And you're thinking, where in the world, what happened?
Absolutely.
I realized he was still there. So it challenged my box that I had him in.
That's very interesting.
So,
so it's funny that you say, like what you're saying is very reminiscent of like my own journey that I think I've talked with you as of recently. I realized when I started out in Christianity and there's this odd dichotomy. So when I started, my faith was based on my experience. And a lot of Christians, that's what they base it off of. My idea was I've experienced things that I've experienced a connection with something outside of me. A lot of people can get that through like meditation or whatever. For me, it was I've experienced this thing, whatever this connection is. And I had this gift of prophecy and I didn't know what to do with. I didn't know how to explain that. And the church and Christianity said, okay, that's God. And I was like, perfect. Makes sense. If God can do that, cool. He fits into this box. And it made sense of my experiences. And as I kind of stepped away from that box a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago now, I realized that those experiences, I was still having them outside of the box. It's funny how that happens. And that kind of changed my perspective a lot. Like the reason why I left Christianity isn't the reason why I don't say like I'm a Christian in the way most people would assume. For conversation's sake, we could say it like that. And so it's interesting how that happens and how it's really, the reason I joined was based on experience, but that's the same reason as why I don't identify and say I'm a Christian nowadays. Do you see like that same kind of dichotomy?
I do, but I don't.
Okay.
I see it from a little different point of view. Because my experience, it wasn't that I had to leave Christianity, but I had to change my view of God. Okay, because my core belief is that God is good and that He loves us. And actually, this is funny. I think I believe that more and deeper than I did when I was going to traditional Christian church. Only because I think God loves us no matter what. And He loves all of us. Like he doesn't care so much, I don't think, that you're outside of the box. You're outside of the traditional Christian values. Because He's not. He's bigger than that. So to me, it doesn't mean that I walk away from being a Christian. It means that my view of God changes. You see,
Fascinating.
it's a little bit different point of view.
Yeah.
So for me, I see, like, I see God doing things in other faiths. I see, I'll have, Jeremiah or somebody will say something that is just like, the Egyptians said this, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, wow,
Yeah.
that's really cool. And rather than just like going, well, that's outside of my belief box, I just go, wow, God can do that even out there. I mean, he is in all this stuff, which I'm sure, if there's people who go to church that I go to, they're going, "Oh God, Phil, what are you saying?"
Hilarious.
And their eyes are rolling in their
yeah.
heads. But that's the God I know.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting for me, and why I don't necessarily walk away or don't consider myself a Christian, is because I still believe that there's God and that God is in control of these things. I just think he's in a lot more control than I think the traditional Christian church teaches.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you said, I used to say, even a blind squirrel can find a nut. Sometimes we're the blind squirrels.
Yeah. That's going to change the way I think about so much, because that saying really stuck with me for years.
Yeah.
That really stuck with me.
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting. I think you're absolutely right in that. For me, how I've been trying to rationalize this, I'm going to kind of verbally process this. That's what I do on the show. Is we know that people are different, and not everyone is the same. We have, personality wise, I'm gonna just level it there, or cap it there. So personality wise, we know some people are type A. They're high strung. They're drive, ambitious, go. Other people are the exact opposite. You couldn't get them to do the bare minimum. Exactly. And so we don't expect the same from both people. And when we're talking with them and trying to explain the same thing to them, we explain it to them in two very different ways. And when we're trying to communicate and get them to understand, we're going to say it completely differently. That's just good communication. Now, when it comes to religion, and when it comes to the idea of God and communicating that, this is how I'm trying to get it to in my own psyche. I've been processing this. Is, to me, it seems like that would be the same. Everyone is wired differently. Everyone comes from different backgrounds. Everyone has different experiences. Some people are open to the idea of healings, of prophecy. Some people are not. Some people are open to the idea of God being the God of psychedelic mushrooms. Other people aren't. Exactly. And God, to say that God is communicating who he is in this one particular area the same way to every single person, no matter, regardless of their experiences, regardless of where they're at, to me, doesn't seem, one, to make sense psychologically, and then two, it doesn't seem to make sense if God is the God who, if God actually cares for people, and if he knows his people.
And if God is as big as
There's another
we
one.
claim he is,
Come on.
then he can't be limited to communicate this way,
Yeah.
this one little way.
Yeah.
If he's the God who could speak and create the whole universe, then why would he be limited to communicating this one way? I mean, I feel God watching a sunset, taking pictures of eagles. I love that. And I feel his presence and all that as much as I do listening to worship music. It's just in a different way. So I think when there's other religions out there and they have a piece of God and they're going, oh, this is it, and most religions around the world are very exclusive. Okay. It's like you believe these things and you stay right here and that's it. If you don't, then you're outside of the box and you're not part of our group. well, it makes me wonder if God showed up today, what group would he end up in?
That's a great question.
Because if he is, the God who could create all this stuff and know every hair on your head to that point, how could he be why should we be excluding him? Why would we limit him to this little, the way we're comfortable, the way we do it? I heard it explained once, and I think it was Dick who said it. It may not have been, but it sounds like something he would have said.
Yeah, sure.
But he talked about God being like God's an elephant.
Yeah.
Okay, he's a big, huge elephant, right? And you got three blind guys who walk up to him and say, "This is God,"
Right.
and they have the trunk, and then another guy has, "Nope, this is God," and he has the leg because it feels like a tree, and the other guy has the tail with the little fuzz on the end of it. And he's like, "No, this is God," and it's like, I think God's bigger than all of that. And in the same way, I think when I hear other religions, Buddhism, pretty much any of them, I find bits of God in them. There's a book that I recommend. I think I've recommended it to you. It's called Eternity in Their Hearts. I read that when I was like new to religion. I was, probably 18, 19 years old. I read this thing and it's a great book, but it talks about, it's from a Christian standpoint, but it talks about people going out into the world and going to these like unreached people groups, people in the Fiji Islands, who, they still hunt with spears. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The very primitive civilizations, in some of the jungles of South America, they show up there, and these guys are talking about, there was this, there's a God, and he wrote a book, and he loves his people, and he's out to find us. And these missionaries go to talk to them, and they're like dumbfounded. Oh my gosh, you already know about who I'm talking to you about. And to me, it's like they had God before Christianity showed up.
Right.
So why would God be limited to just Christianity? Right. And I know the author of that book is probably going, that's not what I meant.
Right.
But that's what I got.
Yeah.
Jeremiah's talked about that with some of his stuff, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, I know. It's really interesting to see like how most of the family has kind of gone down this journey at this point over the last like 5 or so years. It's a very much change. If you would have asked me to say, would you bet money on that you'd be where you are spiritually in 5 years? I'd be like, not a chance. I would never have thought this. It's so interesting, right? So interesting how it happens. So with this, why, and this is a question I don't know if anyone has an actual answer, but I think a lot of people have some good insight on it. And it's, why do you think we try to put God into this box? The best answer I can come up with is that it's because, two reasons. One, if you look from a historical perspective, you could say control. Like if we can control the narrative, then we can control the people. Essentially, from a historical perspective, sure. From a more psychological perspective, I would almost say that it's for security's sake. If it's something we can understand. It's like you're grasping at something and you don't know how to define the unknown, so you have to put some sort of known attribution to it. That's the best I got, though.
I think there's a couple of different things that I think, and like you, I'm kind of processing this as we talk, but
it's the beauty of this show.
But I think for Christianity specifically, because that's been a part of my life for the last 30, 40 years.
Exactly. Right.
30 years anyways. The goal of a lot of Christianity and a lot of churches is to help people live better lives.
Yeah.
Okay, which is not bad.
Yeah,
Good
absolutely.
thing. You know, and you go to almost any religion, you'll find that. You know, you're moving up the ladder with you know karma, whatever.
Sure.
But it's to have people live a better life. So they look at it and they go, okay, if I'm going to live a better life, then I need to do A, B, and C. Well, now you've put rules down. And if you're not doing those things, you're outside of the box. You're outside of our group.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've put those down. I can't find in scripture where they say, where God says to do that.
Yeah.
I can see where a lot of the writings and more, they fought about it amongst themselves. You know, hey, you can do this. No, you can't do that. You can eat food sacrificed to idols. No, you can't.
Right.
You know, this is unclean meat. This is okay meat. They fought about it. And I don't think Jesus, you know,
Really addressed it.
yeah. That wasn't on his list.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Way to say that. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's not what he came for. He came for the sick.
Yeah.
Aha! Your little Mark.
The
Mark
conversation
two.
we were talking about a couple days ago.
Exactly.
Oh my
Exactly.
God.
He came for the sick. He didn't come to lay down the rules and all this stuff. He came for the sick.
Wow.
And I think a lot of the modern day Christianity forgets that.
Do you think that if Jesus came for the sick, do you think that modern day Christian, this is going to be a outrageous claim. I'm just going to brace everyone listening. If you're a Christian, you're going to hate this.
Yeah.
But I know I fell into this category. Do you think that as Christians, we've created a God complex for ourselves where Jesus came for the sick? And so Jesus would go out and meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
And for Christians, I know for myself, I would do this, but
Yeah.
it was, okay, yes, Jesus came for the sick, but I'm the one who's going to go through and reach it. So how would I say this? It's my actions. Even though you point it back to God, I'm still the one going out and doing this.
In Christian terms, I've heard it put, you're his hands and feet.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that's something that, I mean, maybe not say a God complex. That turns a lot of people off.
More than the whole co-redemptors that the Catholics say.
Actually, that's a great point. Yeah.
It's the same idea behind it. It's very, very similar. I think the danger of that that mindset, which I think is
every religion has it.
Yeah,
every group has it.
The problem with that is then it creates a them and us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Oh. And I had an evangelism teacher. This was hilarious. Down in Toccoa Falls, Georgia.
Oh wow! Yep.
At the college there.
Yep.
Great guy from England, and the best British accent. You just sit there and listen to him. It was great.
Fantastic.
But at any rate, I remember him starting the class and saying, "I am nothing. I am one beggar telling another beggar where to find bread." And I thought, that's it.
That's the guy to listen to. Yeah.
That's it. Because it's not that I'm any better than anybody else. I just know where the bread is. And I would be happy to show anybody what I found. But it doesn't make me better. But I think when we start setting up, you start getting people together. People by nature become competitive. It's just part of our wiring.
Yeah.
People start to become competitive, so it starts to become, well, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't drink beer because that's drinking alcohol.
It becomes more of a social.
It becomes,
status
I'm a
thing.
little better Christian than you, and what it ends up doing is ends up setting all those different levels and of I'm better than when in reality we're all screwed up.
Right. Right.
We're all messed up, and God knows it. And God loves us anyways. It doesn't matter if we are in a puddle on the floor, absolute wreck. Our life is just a mess, or we've got it, what we think is all together.
Yeah.
Because what I found is usually when I think I've got it all together, he comes along and goes, and pulls it all apart. Or just blows my mind because he makes himself bigger, and I just go, okay, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So I think we set ourselves up for that, and I think the church has done that for a long time. And I don't think it was something that the church has done intentionally. I think it's just human nature, because they were kind of doing it when Jesus was there. You know, he's like,
I was debating about saying that, but no, it's true.
yeah. You know, the guy, one of them comes up and his mom's like, hey, could he sit on your right and your left?
Right.
And Jesus is like, you don't even have to think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was his response to it. He wasn't like, sure, no problem. Yeah, he's got this side, he's got this side. Slip me another $100.
Right.
You know, we'll bring in your cousin.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But his thing was, don't worry about that. Follow me. You know what I mean? And what I found is more of the truth of Christianity. And I think of any true religion that has a relationship with God is it's about a relationship with God. It's not about all the other stuff.
Right.
He did in my understanding of Christianity, Jesus didn't come back, die on a cross for our sins so that we could follow rules and we could judge each other. He came back to set us free, to be in a relationship with him. He doesn't, the rest of it is irrelevant.
So can you explain a little more, just broader on that idea, to set us free to be in a relationship with him?
Yeah.
What does that look like to you? What does that mean?
What that looks like to me, and this took me way too long to figure out. When I first came into Christianity, let me back way up. I'll pull a Rodney here. Let me back up.
At the beginning, I love it. I almost did that when we started too. That's funny.
When I first came into Christianity, it was like, okay, what is this? What is this about? And yes, my life is a wreck.
Yeah.
And he loves me.
Sure.
Cool.
Sure.
This was great. This was like, finding the ultimate Ben and Jerry's ice cream. This
Oh
was
my
great.
God! Yes. Yes.
This was amazing.
Yeah.
And then it became about, well, you learn about things, and I came in a very conservative side, which we brought you with us through.
Been just about everywhere on that journey and that program.
I went in and got saved in La Baptist Church, which was very much, here's the box, here it is. And, it was, if you spoke in tongues, that was demonic. And, the healings don't happen anymore, even though we pray for them, which I never quite understood.
I don't understand that either. Yeah.
But okay.
Maybe it's the idea that you pray for them because of who it makes you.
I don't know.
Like relying on something other than yourself.
Maybe, yeah.
But like to do that and not believe that it's going to happen seems so self-defeating.
Yeah.
Even if it changes you, quote unquote.
I never quite understood that, but
anyways,
but I went from that to kind of the vineyard, which
so we're middle ground.
Yeah,
actually, I know, wild for coming from conservative, but
Well, what happened was I went to the Baptist church and then I married your mom, who got saved in Pentecostal church.
Yeah,
so it was like two different sides of this thing. Yeah, so I remember vividly sitting in a vineyard church and listening to worship and going, this is nuts, man. I like the music, but wow, this is pretty wild. Can God do this? Is this okay? And I felt God's presence and I knew he was there and I was like, okay. And it is like you said, religion is an experience. So it was my experience of, okay, God is here. This is okay. And then I heard someone singing, and they were singing this beautiful song that was not what was up on the little overhead, and it wasn't what everybody else was singing, but it was beautiful. Yeah. And Mom was like, oh, they're singing in tongues again. I'm sorry. Because she knew that's what I was taught. And I said, no, they're not. And she kind of looked at me like, what? And I said, they're singing like this. And I told her what they were singing. And she's like, you can understand that? And I said, yeah. And she's like, that's cool. That's what it says. Will happen. You can understand tongues. And I was like blown away.
Yeah.
Only time it's ever happened in my life.
Right.
But for me, it was God saying, because he knows me and he's like, I'm going to break your box. And he broke that side of the box for me, but he told me it's okay.
Yeah.
He was like, you're okay. I got this. And bloop, he's bigger than that. And I went, oh, wow. That was kind of my first experience of breaking out of this box. So we moved on, and we've gone. Oh gosh, we've gone to the Catholic Church and
Everything.
we've done charismatic Mennonites.
Oh
And,
man, yeah.
I mean,
I forgot about that one.
oh yeah, that was that was crazy. But it's just different expressions of God
Yeah.
in my mind.
That's a good way to
And
say that.
This was funny. I hadn't thought about this in a long time, but I remember walking down the street in Mechanic Falls. When we lived there. You were little, and I was just talking to God and saying, hey, I don't understand this. You plant me in the Vineyard Church. You take me to the Catholic Church. You take me over here. I know it's you. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me about being him saying, I want you to be my Martin Luther. And I was like, what? Who? And I was like, no. I'm doing the Moses thing. No. I stutter.
Oh yeah,
I'm not gonna do this. No.
Right.
And I realized, holy cow, what he was doing was literally taking my box apart. Of saying, I'm bigger than where I've taken you to the Catholic Church, where I've taken you to the Baptist Church, to the Vineyard.
Oh wow.
I'm bigger than all of that.
Yeah.
And what has happened was, when like a lot of the church history of the Reformation and all stuff, we're going to break away. We're going to be the Protestants. We're going to protest against the Catholic Church. What happened is the body of Christ, the group that God put together for a church, is all over the place, and is all divided and fighting amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Which he's like, no, that is not what I intended. He wants to bring it back, and he gave me many, many times has shown me things about how powerful the church, and I say church with quotes,
Right,
because it's not what most people think,
right,
is so much more powerful than any one denomination and what anyone thinks the church is. Even like the most crazy view or what do you call it? Line of what makes a person a Christian. You take the bare fundamentals. That would include a whole lot of people that would make other people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
There's always something.
Yeah. Because there's always, the Catholics believe that the communion is the actual body and blood of Christ, and Protestants don't. And that was a big thing for them. Yeah. And I've told many people, much to their eye rolling, that my beliefs probably fall more that way.
That's funny.
than
Yeah.
this way.
Yeah.
But sure, you want me to serve communion? I'll do it.
Right. When I was in YWAM, I think we did communion with Oreos and soda at midnight on one night. 24-hour worship thing.
We did it with, I think, Cheetos and Mountain Dew up in
Come
Oakland.
on, that doesn't surprise me at all. Love Oakland.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like, it's what it means.
Yeah.
And
And I sat down and studied with Rodney.
Yeah, I remember
months.
this.
And he came down on one side and I came down on the other. And I love him to death.
Yeah.
I mean, we are brothers to the end.
Yeah.
But we came down on different sides of it. And
It's
that's
crazy
okay.
how that can happen.
Yeah. And
wild.
what I learned in that was that it's okay, and God is bigger than that. And that is how
God is bigger than the things that divide us.
Exactly.
Ooh.
God is bigger than that. And God wants us to have different views of things. Because he's made us.
If we all had one view, it'd be another box.
It would be. And how uncreative would that be? For a creator to make one thing and make it all the same.
That's funny.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's creative, the most creative. To the point that, what do they say? There's a frequency amongst elements and atoms and everything. And the frequency. Yeah. I've heard people talk about the frequency being, that's God's first spoke. And that's what's holding everything together.
Yeah. I think it's B flat, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like, wow, now that'll just blow your mind, wouldn't
Literally,
it?
to know like everything around us is emitting a frequency.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing that like we are all energy. If you go down far enough, we're all made up of atoms. We're made up of energy. And this is going to go into a whole different tangent, but our emotions, I've been deep into the study
Yeah.
of emotions in
Yeah.
the last like year.
Yeah.
A whole textbook on them right over there that I read before bed. But like, when you look at emotions, what are emotions? Emotions are energy. It's us being able, the sensing of energy.
Yeah.
And like when you walk into a room, if you're super scientific, a lot of people, and I had a hard time explaining this, and I hated talking about this because I couldn't explain it. When you walk into a room, you can feel something.
That vibe.
You can feel that vibe, right? For years, I hated that. I went from hating that to then loving that to now I'm fascinated by it. But like, you can walk into a room and you have that vibe. There's something. Either it's great or it's bad or something. You can tell when someone's watching you. You can tell when someone's looking at you for an extended period of time. What is that? I think it's just energy, which could be frequency from what we were talking about. It's so fascinating. There's so much that we don't understand. And then
that just resonates through us all.
Literally.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you are a Buddhist on a mountain in Japan or you're a Southern Baptist in Texas. The same resonance is resonating through you.
Come on.
You know what I mean?
On.
To me, that's how big God is. And then take it outside of that. That same resonance and frequency is resonating through the trees, the ground, the stones, the space.
Wow.
The whole universe
Right.
is just resonating that same sound. And I kind of think that's God. That's him saying, he spoke it into creation. And his voice is still resonating.
That's powerful.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how big I see him.
Yeah.
And
stoked for another 5 to 10 years to see where that goes. It's gonna be crazy.
Well, it's funny. I remember being with Ben, Ben Mosier one time. We used to get together and pray when we lived next door to each other. We used to get together and pray in the mornings, like once a week.
Nice.
And it was great. I love Ben. It was really fun. But I remember we did it one time and we prayed. What was it? Oh God, break me.
Oh, that's a rough prayer.
Never pray that because he hears those.
The few times that I did that, a straight up challenge.
Yeah. He loves it.
Yeah.
But it makes your life a mess.
Exactly. If you wanna know that there's something out there that's listening, pray that.
Yeah. Stuff will happen.
Yeah.
But that's because he seeks a relationship. And he doesn't care if you're a Christian going to church, following the rules, doing this, doing that, and you've got all the little check marks where you should. Or if you are, a drug addict in this gutter, making your own decisions of crashing your life.
Come on, yeah.
He doesn't care.
Yeah.
Either one.
Yeah.
He cares as much for both people. And when we start making different divisions and I've got my act together and I'm here and they don't quite have their act together, so they need my help, so they're down here. It does this, and God sees us this way. For me, I felt his presence in such a more powerful way when I realized that it didn't matter if my life was where it should be. He still loved me. And if he loved me, I could love me. And that changed my life. Because it was like, you start making bad decisions and you start doing things that are going to be self-destructive in your life. You start not liking yourself. I mean, it's just going to happen, 100%. Right? I mean, it doesn't matter religion or not. That's just, you're not going to be real happy with yourself. When I found myself like that, and yet I'm in the church, and I'm going, wait a minute. If I'm this mad at me and I'm making a mess of my life, he can't be happy with me. And that's what I was getting taught and fed. Well, if you do that, then he's not happy with you. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. And God just showed me, no, I love you as much when your life is a mess and it's all things you've chosen to do, or you've chosen to do things that are going to help your life. That doesn't change my love for you. That to me was freedom in the sense of I don't have to live under rules. which I'm sure my
that's
Baptist
gonna
teachers are just going,
right, absolutely. Pensacola Christian College
That's
with a
it.
win.
That's it. That's it. I still listen to the Beatles.
That's amazing. That's yeah.
Yeah. So when I realized that what I did or didn't do didn't impact that, that is where I got freedom. And this is going to sound crazy or horrible. I'm sorry, but I got freedom from the Christian church.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it wasn't about works anymore. It wasn't about what I did or didn't do. It was straight up, he loves me.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I've been on the other side of that, where I'm sure some folks are right now, and where they're saying, well, if you say that to somebody, they'll never change.
Never change. Right.
So what?
So what? Exactly.
We're not here to change people. We're here to get them connected.
Come on.
You know?
Come on.
You get them connected to that love, and let God work it out, what he wants to change or what he wants to do. He may have made them to be that way the rest of their life. You know, because because that was the spin he wanted to put on that paintbrush. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. It's not up to us to do that. It's up to him. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the modern Christian church falls into that of, well, oh gosh, how have I heard it said? God loves you the way you are, but God forbid you stay that way. Every time I hear that, I want to throw up.
Yeah. I know exactly where you're coming from with that. Yeah.
I'm like, no, he loves you where you are, and it doesn't matter anyways, either way. And that's why all of this together is why I would say, to me, myself, I'm a Christian because I believe in this God, but he's bigger than what you typically find in a Christian church, and that's why but I don't throw out my Christianity in that sense.
Right.
I still read the Bible. I still do my men's group Wednesday mornings with the guys who are probably going to see this and go, "What are you doing, Phil?"
Hilarious. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
I still go through like the Bible Cody the Graph, and but meaning to start that up again actually. That's so.
When I hear you talk, and you know, I've heard you come home and say, "I'm not a Christian anymore, Dad." And I'm like, "All right."
Yeah.
It doesn't faze me.
I want you to know that I so appreciate that.
Do you know why? It's not me.
No, I don't, but I appreciate it.
It's because I believe God's bigger, and he's big enough to control, he's big enough to handle that. He's not offended that you come home with, "I'm not a Christian."
Yep.
He's like, "So what?" He still knows you. You still talk to him.
Yep.
I don't care.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it doesn't faze me because I don't think it phases him. Because to me, what it's all about is a relationship.
So with that, here's a question that I wanted to ask Pastor Adam, but I had spaced it.
Sure.
But I would love to ask you this. How do I ask this question? I'm going to just stumble through and make it happen. So when it comes to a relationship, I think, because Pastor Adam talked a lot about that when he was on my podcast, and like going to Oakland, we talk, it's all experience this relationship. It's all about that, which is incredible. And like my whole, like I've said in this podcast and previous, my whole experience and belief in God comes from my experience, aka relationship with him. How do you, it's not how do you define that? Because again, like these are really difficult waters to walk, but what does that, how do you know when you have that, or how do you experience it? So I asked this, I know.
How do you know you experience it outside of experiences?
Yeah. And I know it's a wild question. And I asked this because I have someone in particular in mind, and I know they can't be here to ask this.
Okay.
But someone in particular, they love they grew up in the church,
Yeah.
love the idea, want to have that connection. And they've experienced the similar things in like worship where, like we've talked about, where you feel connected to something and it's like a meditation almost. He said he's gotten that same experience through meditation.
Yeah.
And like, I see there's very similarities. I'm not going to get into that, but how do you go about maybe just starting that relationship, I guess is a better way to word that. From your personal experience.
From my personal experience, if you want a relationship with anyone, you got to talk to them. You know, put it out there.
Yeah.
You know, hey, I remembered, many times going, God, if you're real, show me.
Yeah.
Do something.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. A lot of times he'll do stuff. He'll show up in ways that you did not. That was not your thought.
Yeah. Did not want that. Did not think about that.
You're scratching that lottery ticket and going, God, if you're God, I'm going to be a millionaire in a minute.
Right.
God has other ideas.
Right.
And he's not. I'm not going to say he's not going to do that, but he might, because he's God.
Yeah.
He can do what he wants. But I think starting that conversation and saying, hey, if you're out there, show me somehow.
Kind of starting from square one.
Which is funny because in a lot of people's walks, it's not a straight walk. And you're back to square one. And you're back to square one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're all over the place.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, I mean, I think he enjoys the walk. But this, I think, is his favorite spot. Is square
The
one.
whole faith like a child idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Faith as a child. Faith is, have enough faith as big as a mustard seed, type of thing. I think he likes us there because we're just there. We're not coming there with our laundry list of what we want him to do.
Right.
It's not the drive-through God,
Right.
Where you give your order and hopefully you get it. And he answers things, but sometimes he doesn't. In my own life, there have been times where I have cried out, God, fix this. And I've had to wait years before it got fixed.
Yeah.
And then other things, I'm still waiting. Was it Paul said, the thorn in the flesh? He went his whole life. And heck, God knocked him off a horse. I mean, he knew God. But God chose not to answer that. So, if we go into the relationship with the expectation of getting something, if you were to do that with any kind of person relationship, it's not going to work well.
Or expectation that this is how it's going to happen.
Yeah, it usually won't.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, and it's not a good way to start a relationship. But when you start a relationship with, I just want to sit here and know you. That's it. I just want to know you. Then a relationship can bloom out of that. So, for me, when I'm like, oh, I just don't feel God today, or, I used to have a lot more days of that. I have fewer days of that now because for me, I think I have found ways that I've experienced God. I go sit outside. I go sit up in the land. I go draw. I love to draw. I draw, and I just have a peace that comes over me. That's just, I can relax. So if somebody wants a relationship with God, find that spot.
Whatever that looks like.
Yeah, whatever that looks like. And it doesn't have to be in a pew in a church.
Yeah.
I mean, I've sat in pews in church, lots of churches, and didn't feel God. And I've sat in churches where I didn't think God was, and God showed up.
Yeah, it's like my Utah experience recently. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, I remember I was working towards building up ministry work and all that kind of stuff, within the church. in the Christian church, not the Catholic church. And then I remember going to a Catholic monastery down in Arkansas, sitting there. John Michael Talbot's
Oh,
thing.
yeah. Love John Michael Talbot.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
An amazing musician.
Yeah.
Oh, that guy
I
knows
forgot
God.
about him.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'm sitting there in his little chapel
Yeah.
in the middle of the Ozarks in Arkansas, and I feel God. And I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah.
Do you know these guys are Catholic? It's my thought. You know?
Literally, yeah. When I was in Utah, when I had that experience, first thing, I'm expecting a weekend business trip.
Yeah.
I walk in as Lauren in front of me opens the door, just boom,
Yeah.
God, and I was like, oh God,
Yeah.
what are you doing here?
Exactly.
Like, and then it turns out I think Lauren and I think Lauren and I were the only ones there who had like a Christian background. And it's like 20 people. We had Wiccan, we had pagan, we had atheist, agnostic, ex-Mormon, like you name it. And I literally remember thinking, God, do you know what these people are? Crazy to say that out loud.
Oh, I know.
But
And you
like
know he's got to laugh when you say it.
Oh, I'm sure. But like the thought crossed my mind. And it was that night while I was lying in bed and I had that kind of realization that like, okay, my experience of God, and I experienced God, I think I've talked about it on this podcast, where like, long story short, crazy healings happened and like prophecy. And like I was able to prophesy over these people about her daughter, this one lady about her daughter. It was amazing. And now heal her shoulder. Incredible. People prophesied over me about stuff from when I was a kid that I didn't even realize. And they said it, things happened. Crazy, very inner healing prophecy. And I realized my perspective or framework for that experience was Christian. That was my framework, I think, is a good word for it. Yeah, I understood that in a Christian. It's prophecy, when you know someone's healing. It's God, it's Holy Spirit. I was one of the only people at that retreat that had that framework for it. Other people had, it was God. Other people said it was energy. It was yourself, your higher self. Other people said it was like your ancestors. Like everyone had a different word. The word we chose was woo-woo. For the weekend, it was because everyone agreed something outside of us was happening. And that kind of opened my mind that like, we may have different words for these experiences. We may have different understandings. We come from different backgrounds, from different beliefs. But just because we look at something differently doesn't mean we're seeing something differently.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Beautifully put.
Thank you. Thank you. So fascinating.
Yeah.
So fascinating.
Yeah. I think God enjoys those experiences.
Yeah. Blows your mind.
Yeah. Of just going, oh, that's cute. You think I'm that small. Poof. And he just goes, I'm going to take that wall down and this wall down and let's take them all down.
Let's take them all down. It's fine.
See what happens, you know?
Right.
I think he enjoys that because we have a relationship.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
If I didn't, that would have been terrifying.
If you didn't have a relationship, you'd be going, what the heck?
Exactly.
What is all this stuff?
Yeah.
You know, and you'd be trying to build a framework.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Put it up as fast as I can.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. To me, I have the framework, and it's constantly changing and stretching and getting knocked over.
How do you feel about that? Like, for me, I'm both comfortable and uncomfortable with it.
Yeah. I used to be more uncomfortable with it. Probably the first few times he knocked the walls down, I was like, no. Yeah. I'm not okay with this.
Right.
Wait. I'm trying to put the walls back up, you know? But once you experience something, you can't unexperience it.
The wildest thing.
Yeah. You know, you can't undo it. So I think as he does that, for me, my core, my anchor in the middle of all this is that I believe he loves me and he's good. Everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If I have that core, he can knock down any wall he wants to, and I'm okay. You know what I mean? If I don't have that, I'm getting blown all over the place.
Yeah.
But if I know that he's good, he loves me, he can take me wherever he wants. I mean, I could sit on a mountain in Japan with the Buddha guy next to me and meditate for a month. I don't care.
Yep.
You know?
100%.
And I'm fine with that. I've learned how to quiet myself with meditation, and which, yeah, in some more fundamental Christian groups, they're like, no, that's New Age meditation. No. I would refer them to the verse that says, "Be still and know that I am God."
So exactly right. Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
I have just sat and meditated on that. Just be still and know that I'm God. Doesn't matter what's going on around you. You're God.
Yeah.
And there's something about doing that. And the early church did that. Heck, they probably did that before the early church.
Let's be honest. Yep.
You know, Moses didn't run around on the mountain up there all day long. He probably sat down and was like, okay, you win.
Yep. If Jeremiah is watching, he'll probably say something about the Egyptians doing
I'm
this.
sure
It all goes back.
He did.
Yeah.
So, I just keep coming back to he's bigger.
Yeah.
He's bigger than that.
Yeah.
So,
with that, I remember, again, while I was in YWAM, a lot happened. There was one day while I was there, we were having this big worship session, and really, really intense, great. And I remember asking God, just saying, hey, what is the point of worship? Why, what is this? We do this. Why do we do this? And God said, it's meditation.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? Because I had done a lot of study on meditation before this. And so I was like, I don't understand. And then I remember him saying, and it seems to make sense to me. And he's like, look, when you meditate, what are you doing? You're calming your mind. You're centering yourself. You're pushing all of the other thoughts. If they come, they come, but you're not going to focus on it. You're going to center yourself and focus your attention and your mind on something other than all the troubles that are happening, other than your natural state of just running your mind.
Yeah.
You're focusing on something, usually something like your breath, but something outside of your outside of what's going on in your head.
Yeah. Outside of the chaos.
Exactly. Outside of the chaos.
Yeah.
Thank you. Worship. That's exactly what you're doing. You're taking your attention, your energy, and you're focusing it on something other than the chaos in your head.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's just this interesting perspective and that was what started me on this journey, actually, ironically enough, in YWAM. And it was the idea that for Christians, we have, there's there's worship, right? And then for, say, some Eastern religions or some New Age, you have meditation, but it's really serving the same goal. Everyone has a different framework for it. You have a different mentality. But it's essentially accomplishing the same task, accomplishing the same goal.
It is, because a lot of times I know in worship, you're focusing on maybe the words of a song that talk about God's faithfulness or God's strength or whatever. And to focus on those things when your life is a mess.
Yeah.
And you're like, I just lost my job yesterday and, my dog died. You got all this crap going on in your head, and you can stop and focus on that. That is meditation.
It is absolutely meditation.
Yeah. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That you can do that. I remember another example of God going poof. I'm just changing my perspectives of things. It had to do with worship, and I was Mechanic Falls, and I'm doing dishes one night. You guys, I think you guys had gone to bed, and I'm doing the dishes, and I got worship music playing, and I was really at the time I was really thinking